The DoD even conducts audits on it sometimes to see where the material's going. They like to keep tabs on it. So
They better not come in my shop.
Well, did you fill it out, Bob?
No, I'm not going to fill out another government form. What are you nuts?
Welcome to Season 2 of the Knife Wife podcast. I'm Suz, here with my husband.
Bob Terzuola.
We're professional creatives and entrepreneurs who live, love, and work together. We share our stories to find ourselves in others. P.S. This podcast has little to do with knives. Hey, everybody. It's Suz at the Knife Wife podcast. I'm here with my partner in crime and fun Bobby.
Fun Bobby, that's me.
Bob Terzuola. I use that moniker in my 10 minutes of stand-up I've been doing. And I think it's stuck because now everybody's starting to call him Fun Bobby.
Yeah, and everybody expects me to be funny, but I'm not funny.
Nobody expects you to be fun. Nobody. Believe me. That's how you got the name Fun Bobby. Anyway, so this is a podcast about everything and nothing, and I hope it's a break from toxic media. I hope we get to know some people better. I love people's stories. I find myself in their stories, and I love hearing, their struggles or their triumphs. And, of course, I love funny stories. And we still don't have a TikTok dance, so you're stuck with the podcast. I'm a sexagenarian, and you're a
Octogenarian.
yeah.
That means I have 8 legs.
That's right. Anyway, and we have questions. People have been sending us questions. I had a bugaboo with my email at Suz at Eccentric Suz, so I just downloaded a bunch of questions. So I'll take one today. And someone said to me, "What is a late in life crisis?" Never heard of it. And this was from More Steel, Please. I love people's names on social media. I just love their names. Anyway, what is a late in life crisis? I don't know. I made it up. When people said to me, "Boy, you're doing a lot of things at 69 years old. You're doing this podcast, and now I'm doing stand-up," which I don't know if I'm going to be a stand-up, but I'm practicing it. I said, "I'm having a late in life crisis." And I don't really know what that is. Bob's not having one. Just me, probably.
No, I'm just late in life, period.
Anyway, so that's what it is. I made up the term. I use it all the time. I hear other people now using it, so I'm happy that it's getting some legs. This is it. And apparently people listen to this podcast, which is, still amazing to me. And if you are listening, you can send me an email or a comment. We got lots of really nice comments. I should print those out and read those, but they're sort of like patting ourselves on the back. And people say crazy things to me, on social media. And a lot of people contact me when they want to get to Bob. Right, Bob?
That's true.
That's right. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're listening.
Because I have very little patience with most people.
Right. Or he doesn't even answer the phone. Or his emails, where I'll answer you within 24 hours for an email, unless somehow it got lost in the shuffle. But anyway. So it won't help you to get a knife. It won't help you to get anything by contacting me instead of Bob. In fact, I would appreciate it if you could just harass Bob a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyway, today is the day of recording entrepreneurs. We have a gal on the show. Gal. Do we say that gal? My mother used to say gal. Jessica Walker is on our show today, and she and her husband run Alpha Knife Supply. And so I want to introduce Jessica. Hi.
Hi, Jessica.
Hello. Jessica and her husband run a knife supply company. However, they use their items, what they sell, people use them in incredible ways. In fact, I just saw a picture, and I'm going to put it on the podcast Instagram, of a McLaren with timascus tailpipes, which is the wildest thing I ever saw. But I guess if you have a McLaren, you might as well have timascus tailpipes. And so for people, Jessica, who don't know what timascus is, explain to them what it is.
sure. So timascus is titanium Damascus that we developed a little over 20 years ago. And for people who aren't familiar with Damascus, it's alternating materials. So, like the timascus is alternating layers of titanium. And when you heat them up or apply electricity to them, you can see each layer is a different color. So you get a really neat effect.
Yeah, sort of like a woven, like the millefleur glass Or if you had puff pastry, all the layers of puff pastry. Well,
Yes.
this is titanium, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we developed that a little over 20 years ago. It was my dad, Chuck Bybee, and Master Smith Tom Ferry, and another knife maker, Bill Cottrell. They developed the process. We ended up getting a patent on it, and then after my husband John and I got married, when he got back from Afghanistan, I think that was 2011. He took on making the Timascus for us. And he's
Wow.
been doing it ever since.
Wow. So basically, you got him outside in the heat in another building. He's not doing this in the room you're in, right?
No, the I have to say though, the shop crew definitely appreciates it this time of year. In the winter time, everybody appreciates his forging. Summertime, not so much, but
Yeah, I bet.
makes things nice and toasty now.
I bet. When you met him, your dad had the business, right?
Yes. So yeah, my parents and I started the business. I was really young. I was in my early teens, and John and I actually met through the knife community. So he was a knife maker, and there was a group of kind of younger teen people who were all knife enthusiasts, and we would talk on one of the forums,
Ah,
and we became friends that way, and then later on became more than friends and ended up getting married.
yeah. And so when it became more than friends, were you at a knife show? Did he take you out for coffee, or how did that come about?
Sure. So we were just talking online. We were long distance friends. He was in Ohio and I was back in Washington State.
Ah.
And so a couple of years of talking back and forth, and then he came out. We officially met. He came out to see me in college, and one of the ways I encouraged him to come out, there was a knife maker, S.R. Johnson, Steve Johnson,
Mhm.
who lived only a couple hours away from where I was going to school. And so I told John if he came out, we could go get a shop tour from Steve. He
Ah,
thought
you
that was really
lured
cool.
him out there because they
I
can't
did.
resist looking at another shop, can they?
Yes.
Yeah, Bob loves that. So he came out there and then you said, "Well, you're in Ohio and I'm in Washington. What are we gonna do?"
Yeah, the long distance is definitely not easy.
Mhm.
It's kind of funny, the first time he met my parents was actually at Blade Show.
Mm.
He came out to help us at the show and made a really good first impression. He was the only guy I ever dated that my dad actually liked.
Boy, that helps.
Yeah, that was impressive, and, yeah, my parents really liked him. He just I'll never forget, he came in, he'd been walking outside in the Blade Show in Atlanta in the summertime in the Georgia heat, came in,
Mm.
dropped his bags, and said, "What can I do to help?" and just jumped right in.
Wow. That's music to my ears in our house. If somebody wants to help, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So good. So it seems to have worked out. So tell us about your roles in the business and what are your roles of your folks now?
Yeah, so my parents are, I would say, semi-retired. So my mom is she helps watch our kids. We have 3 little ones that are 5 and under, so they're very busy.
Mhm.
And, she helps watch them and is the chauffeur getting the kids to and from school. And
Oh,
my dad still helps out in the office, but he very much enjoys being grandpa, so he likes to spend as much time with the grandkids as possible too.
okay.
So I run the office, so anytime somebody needs to call or email in with a question, I'm usually the person that they'll correspond with. And then John, he is the head forge and the guy out in the shop. He's helping to run the crew out there and spends most of his time making Timascus. That's a huge portion of what he does every day.
And that's a huge portion of what you sell, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say it's probably the thing that we're most known for.
Yes, and I would encourage people who are not in the knife industry. Timascus is a great product for jewelry. It's fabulous for jewelry, and it's colorful. It would make great cabochons. It would make all great, any kind of cabochon you could make out of that, right, Bob? I mean,
Mhm.
I used to make jewelry that I used Bob's scraps from the knives, and I sold every piece of jewelry that had that in it, and I see a lot of knife makers make the end cuts of a bolster or something, and it's like a
Yeah.
triangle sort of, and that's okay, but they could really be worked to really be pretty, and they could even use a laser on it to remove some of it too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I use it a lot in clips. I'll make a knife with bolsters and then a matching clip, a pocket clip to go with the bolsters, and it really, really looks nice.
It does. It zings it up without making it too ungapachka. And
Overloaded.
if anyone doesn't know the Jewish term for ungapachka, it's a thing that we see a lot in knives where people have 12 materials on one knife and you don't know what your eye doesn't know where to go. And it's a Yiddish term meaning too much of everything. And we taught that to someone once, and he still has it on his wall because he loved the term so much. Ungapachka. How do you spell that, Bob?
U N
Come on, you're my spell
U
check.
N G A P A C H A E H.
Oh my gosh, that's Yiddish for you. And so, how long have you been working together with John?
So John and I, we just hit our 15-year anniversary. So, and he was helping out with the business just a couple months before we got married. So, a
Mm,
little over
okay.
15 years.
Jessica, how do you handle all your packing and shipping and accounting and stuff like that? Do you have a separate organization there?
All the logistics for that. So, with it being a family business, the family members do wear a lot of hats. So, I do some of those tasks, and then we also have a crew of people who help us, especially with the packaging. That's we've got a great crew that works for us. They're great group of guys.
Yeah, we just hired a merch czar, and his job will be fulfilling the orders, and I will happily be fired from my job. And he's just he's younger. He knows what he's doing. He knows what people like in the EDC community. I think it's much better than a 69-year-old doing that. And I was telling Bob today or yesterday, we were packing up the OGs that we got from Fox Knives in Italy, and we were packing them up for orders. And I said to him, I have not grown 1 inch since I was 9 years old working at my mother's gift shop. I wrapped all the packages, all the things that were sold in her shop had to be wrapped and came in a beautiful gift box. And so that was my job. And my job was to wrap things for mailing. And I feel like I have never left that. It's my lot in life, I guess.
You're back in the mailroom.
Yeah, extensively experienced.
Expensively experienced. Perfect term. I love that, Jessica. Tell me something that you're proud of in your business that's happened that you were, if you look back and say, well, I'm glad we did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I would definitely say the growth has been fun to watch. We laugh a lot about the good old days. So we were originally up in Seattle area, and we moved down to southern Utah. Let's see, we're at 9.5 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll laugh about the good old days of some of the stupid stuff that we would do in the shop back in Washington because we didn't know better. Or we didn't have the tools to do things, or
Mm-hmm.
all the it's just been fun to watch all the changes, something as simple as getting a new piece of equipment and not having a forklift to move it. So it was
Ah, mm-hmm.
you know, the human forklifts, get a couple different people and lift and hope nobody gets squished. And I very, very much appreciate that we don't have to deal with things like that now. You have much bigger shop space and forklifts and people and the tools that we need to do the jobs that we do. It's
Ah, yeah.
the guys always get a kick, our crew always gets a kick out of it when we talk about some of the things we used to do. Before we had this tool, we used to use a sander, a little handheld sander or
Mm-hmm.
different things like that. So
Yeah, Bob is famous for this, but when we moved from our industrial space in California into the garage in our house, he had a milling machine, and we had a friend who had a forklift, and he brought the forklift, he brought it there. And Bob being Bob, once it seemed like that was a good place to put the milling machine. And milling machines, how much do milling machines weigh, Bob?
1,700 pounds.
There we go. I call it an Egyptian moment. So he wanted to move that 2 or 3 inches, right, Bob? It wasn't quite where it should
Well,
be.
yeah, it was more than that. It was 6 inches.
Oh, 6 inches.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. So our son was visiting and helping set up the shop, and the two of them, tell us how you move that milling machine.
Well, we put a little wedge underneath one side and slipped a round piece of steel, a steel bar underneath,
Mhm.
and jacked up the other side with the crowbar, put another piece of steel underneath it, and just used it as rollers. And we used I think it was about an 8-foot 2x4 as a lever to just kind of wedge it over just a little bit on those rollers. And then when it kind came to the end of the rollers, we just slip another one underneath, just like the Egyptians did.
Yeah, we had an Egyptian moment anyway, and my son loves stuff like our son loved the stuff like this, so
Yeah.
he was all down for it. I have some cute pictures of them doing this in the shop.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So, a lot of people don't know who are not in our I call it the sausage fest of a community, but, in the knife world, they don't know there's a lot of fun things that happen or some crazy stories. I mean, there should be a reality show that's not forging. It should just take place, let's say, in the Pit, which is a room at the Blade Show in Atlanta, which is the biggest knife show in the world. And I've seen all kinds of things in that happen, and usually
Oh,
they're
yeah.
they're a little alcohol fueled. But I think you've had a few, moments there that we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think some of my most fun stories from over the years are either at a show or on the way to a show or on the way back from a show. And, I'll never forget the very first knife show that we went to. This was before we got into the business because we were a bunch of knife nuts. That's why we started the business.
I love a good knife nut.
Yes. My dad and I had just been into factory knives, and we really didn't know anything about custom knives. And so we heard about a knife show down in Oregon, in Eugene, Oregon, and decided to go down there, and that was about a 5-hour drive from where we lived. And I'll never forget, my mom, before we went into the room, she said, "Now, if there are a bunch of freaks in this room, we are leaving." 'Cause we had no idea what to expect,
Right.
and we went in and met people and had absolute blast. We ended up having to get a hotel room and spending the night because it was so much more fun than we expected,
Oh,
and the people were great, they were not
mhm.
freaks. So,
A lot of cargo shorts and black
Well,
T-shirts, right?
maybe not all of them. I remember the Eugene show. I used to do
yes.
that show.
Yeah, it was entertaining, but the people were really great, and that was what kicked us off, finding out about custom knives and getting more into that world. And then, later on, as we started buying more custom knives, my mom made it clear that my dad and I were spending too much money on this hobby,
Uh-huh.
and she told us, "You guys are gonna have to come up with a way to finance this," and that's what prompted the start of the business.
Ah,
We had Boeing surplus back in our area, and my dad worked for Boeing, so he had, easy access to the materials there, and titanium was one of the things that they had at Boeing surplus. So we started buying pieces and, had a lot of knife maker friends that were interested in the titanium, and that's what kicked it off. But,
cool.
yeah, I'll never forget, we still tease my mom about that comment about the
Yes,
the
well,
freaks.
you gotta have somebody like Bob in the relationship. Bob is, he's fun Bobby, but Bob is, he does the taxes, he deals with the accountant and puts all the has all the numbers in. And,
Mhm.
I'm the dreamer. I'm the one who's thinking up things to do. Like, oh, let's do a podcast. So, and Bob will say, well, are we going to monetize this? I'm like, oh, monetize it? Oh, but if we were like me, both of us were like me, we would be living in our car by now.
Just when you said Boeing surplus, was that up at Kent,
Yes,
Washington?
exactly. Yep, you're exactly right. It's closed down now, but yeah, it was a lot of fun when it was there.
Well, when I went to Michael Walker's shop and he taught me how to make the liner lock out of titanium, he told me about Boeing. So when I went, one of the times that I went to the Eugene show, several of us piled into a car and we drove up to Kent, and I got my first piece of titanium digging through their, oh, they had an enormous box with
Those bins.
the
Yeah.
bin, yeah, with titanium sheets and so forth. And I picked out a piece. It wasn't really very big, a couple of feet by a couple of feet maybe. And we drove back to Eugene, and then I took that on the airplane back
That's
Airplane
to
parts
great.
on the airplane?
yeah. I was living in Santa Fe. We took the airplane back down to Albuquerque, and we drove up to Santa Fe.
I would say that's a knife maker's dumpster dive, wouldn't you?
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. Oh, I love that place. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. You find lots of neat things there.
Yeah, Bob gave me I made some birds that had wings that are made out of it was a green material on titanium or steel. I don't know what plane it was from or what it was from. He's got all these scraps from military things.
Well, I got a commission from a family to make a series of ATCF knives that they would give away one a year to the pilot of the year in honor of their father, who was shot down and killed in Vietnam. And I found out the kind of airplane that he flew, and I'm not exactly sure I remember what it was. It may have been an Avenger, but I can't remember. But I found a place in Arizona that they called the Boneyard. Did you ever hear of the Boneyard?
Yes.
It's a place in Arizona in the desert where they park all of these
In
old,
Arizona, a desert?
yeah, old airplanes. You know, they don't destroy them. They just put them in the desert. I called up the manager, and he sent me a panel from the same type of airplane that these people's father flew. He was a colonel. His name was Anthony Shine. I put a piece of the fuselage on each of the 10 knives that I made for the family so that they could use that piece of fuselage as an engraving plate when they presented the knife to, I guess it was the pilot of the year or something in the Air Force. So, and Susie had a piece of that, and that's what she was referring
Yeah,
to.
and I made birds, I made jewelry, and I made the wings of the birds
Yeah.
out of this,
Mhm.
and I
Oh,
re
that's me.
yeah, that was fun. Yeah, we found out after making jewelry at Bob's shop that, there really wasn't room for 2 of us and, knives trump jewelry without a doubt. So, I'm sort of glad to be out of there because, I never really wanted to work that closely with him. We worked together, but that's close. We were butt to butt in the other shop, so
I didn't mind.
I know, we were glad to have somebody in there. And Jessica, you told me a story about Tom Mayo, and Bob was like, "I don't know if we should tell the story." I said, "No, Jessica said she thought it would be fine to talk about
Oh my
Tom Mayo."
goodness. Okay. Yeah, so that was when, John and I think it might have been that first year when John came to help us at the show, and, I was taking him around and introducing him to different people, and because there were you know how Blade is, there's so many people there that are, like Bob, that are icons in the industry, and it's really exciting to be able to go talk to them face to
Right.
face.
And for people who don't know who Tom is, he is an icon, just like Bob is. I mean, he is well known. Everybody knows Mayo. He shoots holes in his knives.
Living in
He
Hawaii.
lives in Hawaii. He's living his best life. And a surfer, real surfer. He's got quite a provenance. But anyway, go on, Jessica.
Yes. So, and I've known Tom forever. He's like an uncle.
Mm-hmm.
We in fact, my dad and I bought knives from him. He was one of the people that we had knives from before we got into the business.
Ah.
And so I wanted John really, my husband John really looked up to Tom. I wanted this to be a nice introduction. And we walk up to Tom's booth, and Tom said, "Are you John Walker?" And John said, yeah." And Tom grabbed John by the wrist and picked up one of his TNT knives and acted like he was gonna stab John in the hand. And I just we were both totally shocked, and I just shook my head and I said, "Yep, this is Tom." What else do you say in that situation?
Exactly. And Tom never holds back, right?
No, no.
Nobody wonders what Tom's really thinking. We know.
Yeah,
We
he's
know.
very outspoken.
And I love that about him, actually. I really do. There's not a lot of filter, but he's a great guy. He's a funny guy. I always have a good time with Tom. He puts smart remarks on social media on things that I post.
That sounds about right. I've always enjoyed going to knife shows. Like you said, it definitely is a sausage fest, but I feel very, very safe there.
You do, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, half the people got a concealed carry permit. They got a piece on them, and the other half has got 25 knives in their pockets of their vests. So
Yes. Yeah, it's, we kinda joke in our family, we say going to a knife show is like going to a family reunion, except we like the people that we're gonna
yeah, my family resembles that remark. What else, Bob? Oh, I know. You told me another story because so we go in this place at this show, guys, called the Pit, and it's
Yeah.
it's got 2 bars and a bunch of stand-up tables, and It's usually it's tamed down. COVID really put a damper on it.
Yes.
It's tamed down a lot, but, I have seen some incredible, probably bad behavior.
Yeah. I
Have you seen something?
Yes, I have. I remember there was one year, and there really aren't too many women down in the pit usually.
That's for sure.
There's a handful of us, but it's definitely it's a big group of guys. And yeah, there's some people who are probably drinking a little bit too much. I remember
Yeah.
there was one guy who was getting a little too being a little too forward with a woman, and she was trying to very nicely shut him down, and he started to get a little bit more aggressive. And I will never forget, there was this mob of guys that immediately descended on the handsy guy, and he immediately regretted his choices. I mean, it was like something out of a movie. It was just this immediate.
Mhm.
He was in trouble and he knew it. And I don't think he would ever make a mistake like that again. But yeah, it definitely, watching it happen, I was reminded how safe I felt in that environment. Even though everybody was a little bit wild and
Yeah.
having a party, I never had to worry.
Yeah, one time at this I'm gonna tell a story on myself. One time at the pit, somebody had a vape pen, and I had tried one, someone else had one years ago, and I'm not a drinker. So I said, "Well, would you like to try a hit of this?" And he said, "I gotta go to the other side of the room to get a drink for somebody." So I took a hit off this vape pen, not knowing how strong this stuff was. Had no idea. And I took it and then instantly, I was way too high. It was instant, which I was really
'Cause
surprised.
he had been puffing constantly all evening long,
He
so
puffs every day, all day,
yeah,
yeah.
and it
He's
didn't
what I call a professional.
yeah, it didn't look like he was either like it was particularly
No, I
strong.
didn't think I did I should know better because someone who's doing something like that all day long,
Yeah.
they have a tolerance to it.
However, with lightweight Susie,
Yeah, so the one hit Susie, the one hit wonder, they called me in the movie. So anyway, so I took the hit of this and I went with him to get the drink. By the time, there was hundreds of people I had to make my way through. By the time we got to the bar where the drink was, I was so overwhelmed. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I was not having fun at all. I was having fun before I did that. Lesson learned. Uh, and and so, and it makes me quiet and whatever. So then I looked across the room and I thought to myself, I have to walk back through all these people to get to the elevator. Oh my God. So I said to him, "Could you help me walk through the," and he said, "What?" I said, "Could you help me walk through this crowd to get to the elevator?" He said, "Why are you going to the elevator?" I said, "Yeah, this stuff is way, way above my pay grade." And so he did. He helped me walk me across the room. Everyone was saying hello to me. They had no idea how no one could tell, I don't think, that I was absolutely out of my mind. And, took me to he said, "Do you want me to help you to the room?" I said, "No, I can get to my room, I think." And I was so happy when the doors opened up and there was no one in the elevator but me. And and that was the end of my night at the pit. Never will do that again. Never, never, never. So, yeah, it's hard to explain, our world that we live in. For those who live in it or have been with it, in it for a long time, I don't know if we take it for granted, but we're very used to it. And especially the Blade Show is just,
Mhm.
it's like any huge convention you've ever been to. And people who've come to it for the first time, they had no idea what they would find. I mean, they just had no idea there was this huge industry, and it is huge. um,
It is.
it is, so yeah. Right now, I think the industry is a little soft, and, our economy's not so good, and I see, lots of people freaking out, and I'm like, "It'll come back." Yeah, we've lived through a few of these downturns, and, it'll come back. So but don't you think there's a lot of knives out there, Jessica?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's hard to understand the scope until you go to something like Blade Show or SHOT Show, or it really is mind-blowing.
Right. And then there's a lot more because of all the CNC machines, there's a lot more knives that are available than there were 10 years ago. And I think there's only about the same amount of dollars. And it's the price of getting better at doing things using these machines. I mean, if you're doing what Bob does, and do them the dinosaur version, you can't make that many. But if you have a machine, you can. And then there's all the companies from overseas that are there too.
Mhm.
So, but I like it. I love the Blade Show is my favorite show just because it's a little bit of everyone. There's not freaks, as your mother said, but there are some characters, and I look forward to those characters. In fact, one of the characters who makes it into this podcast, he hasn't been on in a long time because this is you're probably my last knife related interview that I have lined up is Jack Alvarez. You know who Jack
Oh,
Alvarez
yeah.
is? Yeah, everybody knows Jack Alvarez. So Jack Alvarez, you got frequent flyer miles on this podcast. Everybody talks about Jack Alvarez. And I saw him once at a Blade show. I told this on the first episode. I knew him and Alan Elishewitz. I saw him running down the main aisle in the middle. I saw him running and I thought he was running to a table or whatever. And I was standing there talking to Jack and he was running to tell me to get away from this guy and push Jack out of the way and said to me, "You can don't you know about this guy?" I'm like, "Ah, he's harmless. He's all right. Bob loves him." Bob wrote to him in jail. Bob was a nice guy.
Oh my goodness.
He calls me Yoko Ono because I blew up his party. Because Bob used to sell to dealers first, and I said, "No, I think you should sell to your end users first, and then if you have knives left over, sell to the dealers." And, I came in at a time where Bob didn't need to do that anymore. That I hadn't seen. I hadn't been there from the very start. Anyway, Jack didn't like that. He wanted first
Yeah, I
dibs.
bet.
So, oh well. So, in this business, in working together, I mean, we still butt heads sometimes, but not a lot anymore. It's pretty, we're pretty divided. But what would you say to other couples who are new to working together? Whether it doesn't have to be the knife industry, any entrepreneurial situation.
Sure. I think one thing that John and I have found that works really well is we recognize what each other's strengths and weaknesses are, and we play to that.
Mm.
So John is incredibly creative. He's one of the most creative people I've ever met. And so that's one of the reasons we keep him out in the shop, and he's always working on something new, developing a new pattern or a new way to do things, and he's fantastic at that. Logistics, not his strength so much.
Huh.
And
I
then
relate to that guy. I gotta get to know him better. We could live in our cars.
we are the inverse of each other. So I am a logistics person through and
Mhm.
through. I geek out on numbers. That's the kind of
Mm.
person that I am. I am not creative.
Mm.
So we recognize these are the things that we're good at. These are the things we aren't good at. And I try really hard not to go into his creative territory,
Mhm.
leave that is his space, and he tries to let me do my thing on logistics, and as long as we stay out of each other's way, it goes really smoothly. Um, I should say most of the time. We do occasionally butt heads. I think it wouldn't be a real marriage if that didn't happen,
Right.
and, it is not the easiest working together with your spouse, but we absolutely love it. We get a lot of time together, and it's great. I wouldn't have it any other way.
And you don't have to come home and say, "Well, how was your work day today?"
Yeah.
You know.
Not a whole lot of mystery there.
Do you keep it at work and not bring it home? Or some people do. Some people have rules about this.
We're not too strict on it. I mean, that is one thing that's also cool about us being knife nuts originally is that this was something that we were excited about before we got into the business, and
Uh,
we still like knives and get excited about it. So, even when we're sitting at home, John will see something cool on social media, a knife something, and show it to me, or I will do the same with him. And there's certain topics we definitely keep at work, but no, we still talk about lots of work stuff at home
okay.
after hours.
And do your kids like knives?
They're they're still pretty young. They
Mhm.
they do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to when we start taking them to shows. I think that's gonna be a blast. My oldest is very social, and she calls herself the princess of Timascus. So we're gonna have to well, I'll have to get her a little tiara or something for her first show.
Well, we're gonna
But
have to
yeah,
make her a T-shirt with a little drawing of a princess wearing a Timascus, patterned
there you go.
something. See, the
Yeah.
creative person is already thinking of the graphic image of that.
I like that. We'll have
Yeah.
to we'll have to do that. But yeah, they like knives. My 2 boys, the younger guys are we, don't let them play with them too much.
No.
Sharp objects with, the little guys, not the best idea.
Yeah.
But,
Well, you got a point.
They do love going out in the shop with John though and seeing what he's doing, and every once
Sure.
in a while we'll pull him in on projects and they love that. So,
Cool. Well, I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. Do you have any more questions, Bob?
No, but Jess, please give my best regards to Chuck and your mom. I remember them from years and years and years ago.
And I'm new to this party, so you guys all knew each other before the Suze showed up.
yep, known
So
Bob for a long, long time.
There was an interesting thing that I was going to buy some zirconium from you one time, and I had bought some from somebody else, and I wanted to get some from you. And you said, "Well, you've got to fill out this federal form." I
The
said,
paperwork.
"What? What kind of federal form is this?" And you said, "Well, it's some sort of a material that's guarded or restricted or top secret or something." I said, "No, it's not." But I made my wedding rings out of it. How bad can it be? And
Yeah, it's,
so, what was that?
sure, so that's when we buy Zirc, we have to sign, there's some DoD paperwork. Zirconium is used in different military weapons like cluster bombs because it is so reactive, it's so sparky,
oh, it's
Right.
very
and
sparky, yeah.
yeah, definitely. Anybody who's worked with it a little bit is, they know right away it's a different material. But yeah, it's a pretty versatile material. It's used to blow things up, and then it's also used in, different, like, joint replacements and artificial joints and things like that, so
Ooh, I
blows
would
things
like
up and then
zirconium. I'm getting a new knee, but it's not a zirconium. They're 3D printing my knee.
oh,
Pretty
wow, that's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I
Very
hope.
cool.
We'll see. I'll let you know.
So
Uh,
is that still in effect?
yeah, yeah, it's the DoD even conducts audits on it sometimes to see where the material's going. They like to keep tabs on it, so
Really?
we jump through their
They
hoops.
better not come in my shop.
Well, did you fill it out, Bob?
No, I'm not going to fill out another government form. What are you nuts?
Yeah, Bob will not fill out any government forms. He had to deal with the DMV this morning. He was ready to wring their necks, but he got off scot-free today. But, yeah, he doesn't like government forms. He doesn't like government regulations. He doesn't like government at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Period.
Years ago when we lived this you don't know this, Jessica, we lived in New Mexico. I'm quite a gardener, and, we had this garden, walk, and our house was in the garden walk, and these 2 young guys came in the backyard, and I was showing people something, and I had this huge about a quarter of an acre of raised beds, and it was all surrounded by fencing and shade cloth, and because in Albuquerque, it's not easy to grow things. Anyway, so these 2 young guys and most of the old people, there were old people there. They silver hair, blue hairs were gardeners. There were no young people at this garden walk. And these 2 young guys in their 30s, came up to me and they handed me their business card and it had some, I don't know, strange name for synergy products or synergy something. And I was like, "Well, yeah, hi, can I help you?" And they said, "Well, we, grow pot, marijuana for medicinal purposes, and we'd like to hire you." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, can I carry a gun?" And they said, "Oh, no, we don't have a gun there." I said, "Well, you're the number one people are robbing." I said, "Do you have Rottweilers?" And they said, "No, we don't have Rottweilers." I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Well, before we can hire you, you have to fill out this 25-page federal thing." And well, when Bob heard that, he said, "Not only are you never having anything to do with them, but you're not filling out. The government does not need to know that much about you." So I did not go to work for them. They tried to get me as a consultant, but I still had to fill out the 25-page form, and I said, "No,
No thanks.
no, thanks." So, anyway, well, that pretty much wraps it up. It's been a lovely time chatting with you, and I'm so thrilled to share you with other people in our industry and elsewhere, and my jewelers who listen to this podcast. Check out their website. Tell me your website and tell me your Instagram and all your digits.
Sure. So it's alphanifesupply.com, ALPHA. And Alpha Knife Supply is a tag it's on YouTube, on Instagram. We always try
Mhm.
to use the company name when we're doing our social media names.
Okay. All right. And you have a website that has all kinds of stuff on it.
Yes. Yeah, you can see the timascus. And then there's lots of other knife making materials, blade materials, and different handle materials.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of fun stuff.
And we get an update every month, I think, on your new inventory.
Every week we send one
Every
out on
week, yeah.
the new items. Yep, and we post on Instagram pretty regularly too on the new things that are in work. It's a lot
Right,
of fun.
yeah. Mhm.
All right. Well, for today, we say
Adios.
Arrivederci.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please share this with a friend and subscribe where you listen to podcasts. Support our efforts through Patreon at TheKnifeWife, and for all Terzuola goodness, go to terzuola.net. And remember, if you're not laughing, you're not living. Comments and questions can be made on Instagram at The KnifeWife Podcast or our Facebook group, The KnifeWife Podcast. And if you're a couple who work together and would like to be on our podcast, tell us about yourself with an email at eccentricsuz.com or terzuola.net.